Welcome all the students of class 10, parents, teachers and other viewers. You are now in the social science class. We have a student with us in the studio. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Rahul. I'm from Modern International School, New Delhi.
Thank you. You are aware that social science constitutes many subjects: history, geography, economics, political science, sociology, business studies and others. Among all subjects, economics is an important and also interesting subject. This subject is introduced in rudimentary form in class 6. In class 9th and 10th, some important economic concepts which we come across in our daily life are introduced. In the previous session, we discussed about how goods can be classified into 3 on the basis of the stage in which it is produced. They can be classified into raw material, intermediate goods and final goods. We also looked at how economic activities can be classified on the basis of the nature of the production processes, how the goods are produced. We looked at primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. We also introduced you to the concept of gross domestic product. What is gross domestic product? How it is estimated by using one method called value added method. I also showed you the commodities like wheat, sugar, wheat flour, bread, how the values are added in each production stage actually. Now let us look at how India as a country has performed in terms of GDP. If you look at the way GDP is estimated in the country, there is one organization called Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. They collect data on all the goods and services produced in the country. Let us look at the way the GDP has increased over the years. I already told you that GDP is nothing but the total income of a country, the productive capacity of the country. GDP is not about the assets that we are having. It is not about the money that we hold in the form of cash. It is the productive capacity of the country estimated on the basis of the final goods and services produced in the country. Okay. Now we should know how much India is producing, what is the value of the GDP,
Yes.
Whether we have increased our production capacity over the years.
Yes.
So for that purpose, I am showing you some diagrams. Look at this diagram. This diagram, the first diagram, contribution of sectors to GDP 1973 to 2014. If you look at the graph, I am giving you the data for 1973 to 74 and 2013 to 14. So if you look at the total value of GDP in 1973-74, it was roughly about 5 lakh crores. Totally how much we were able to produce? 5 lakh crores worth of goods. But today, if you look at in recent years like 2013-14, we are able to produce almost like 60 lakh crores.
Yes.
60 lakh crores worth of goods and services we are producing in India. Okay. The colors that I am showing you, please careful, because we are going to use this color in the subsequent graphs also. The dark blue shows the primary sector, the light green shows the secondary sector and the orange color shows the tertiary sector. Okay. So if you look at the agriculture production, primary sector, in 1973 we were able to produce goods worth of 2.5 lakh crore. Today we are able to produce worth of 8 lakh crores. If you look at the service sector, industrial sector, we were able to produce 1.1 lakh crores in 1973-74.
Yes.
Today we are able to produce 10.7 lakh crores. And if you look at service sector, which is slightly the largest producer even in 1970s as well as today, we were able to produce services worth 2.6 lakh crores.
Yes.
And today it is also the largest producer. Service sector constitutes about 39 lakh crores. I'm just rounding up the figure of 38.7 into 39. So 39 lakh crores. So almost like 40 crores.
Yeah.
40 crores out of 60 crores coming from the tertiary sector alone.
Okay.
So by this, you will come to know that the tertiary sector contributes more to the GDP.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a bar diagram which tell you only the numbers. If you want to know the proportionately which sector is contributing more, then we have to use some other tool called pie diagram. I'm sure in your mathematics class you must have read what is a pie diagram, how to draw a pie diagram. I'm showing the pie diagram here actually. So in the pie diagram, the same data I'm converting the raw numbers into percentages. So if you look at in 1970s, the dark blue part, the pie, the single pie constitute 40%. That means agriculture produced 40% worth of goods in 1970s. Today in 2013-14, it is producing only 14% of goods. Okay, from 40% to 14% it has come down. If you look at the service, like a factory sector or the secondary sector, in 1970s it produced about 17%.
Yes, sir.
Today it has increased to 19%.
Yes.
So if you look at 40 years, it has increased its share by 2% only.
Yeah.
And if you look at the service sector, it was producing 43% in 1973-74. Today it is producing 67%. Okay, so the service sector contribution from 43 to 67, it becomes the largest contributor to the GDP. Okay, and why this is happening, you may be interested.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at the way, this is with regard to the output, it is with regard to the production, okay, the value of the goods and services. Okay, who produce these goods and services? People. They may be working as a self-employed, they may be working as hired workers, okay, working for others. Okay, so these people, we also should know how, what is the proportion of people working in different economic activities. That can also be used to the same category, primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector. I am giving you the pie diagram for another 40 years, 1977 to 1978 to 2017-18. So if you look at the dark blue or grey color, you will find that in 1970s, 71% was engaged in agriculture sector. Today, 44% is engaged in agriculture sector. Okay, from 71 to 44 is a great achievement. Okay. Now, if you look at the service sector, it was employing only 18% in 1970s. Today, it is employing only like about 31%. It has increased its share from 18 to 31%. How much it is increasing? Almost 13% share it has increased. In terms of employment also, service sector is contributing more. Factory sector, which is in light green color, it has increased from 11% to 25%. So how much it has increased? How much it has increased in terms of contribution? Secondary sector means people working in factories, people working in electricity, people working in construction sector. They're all coming at the secondary sector. So their share also it is 14%. So if you look at the factory sector, its share is increased by 14%. And both service sector and secondary sector, their share has increased more or less similar level. Whereas in case of agriculture, it has cut down from 71% to 44%. But if you look at today's scenario also, who was the major employer? Who is giving the major employment here? It is the agriculture sector. Okay. So earlier it was 70%. Almost 3/4 of the people were engaged in agriculture, but today it is around 0.5%. Only 2/5 actually. Okay, so 44% is engaged in the agriculture sector. So this means even today also agriculture is the major employer in India.
Dr. Srinivasan, so what do you think? Increase in agriculture or decrease in agriculture, or increase in tertiary or decrease in tertiary would lead to economy?
What is good for the economy that you are referring to? Very good question that you asked. In fact, we are going to come to that point in the next slide actually. Okay, if you look at generally, a country can become developed country. In this process, many things happen actually. A country can become developed country. In this process, the share of agriculture comes down, both in terms of production, both in terms of employment. In production and employment, for example, in India, from 71 to 44% has come down in the 40 years. So it is a good symptom that people depending on agriculture has to come down. Similarly, output. The output earlier it was 40%. 40% of the total production. Now it is 14%. So that decline in the output, decline in the employment in agriculture is good. People move from agriculture to other activities. That is good for the economy. But if you, I am just giving you some comparison how other developed countries are performing in this area. look at this chart, this pie diagram. If you look at the dark blue, how much primary sector is in America, USA? It gives you in agriculture, like in case of GDP in America, only 1% is coming from agriculture.
Yes, sir.
And if you look at the secondary sector, almost 18% is coming from the secondary sector. And Baki 77% coming from the tertiary sector.
Yeah.
So the tertiary sector is the major contributor. Okay. And agriculture constitutes only 1%.
Okay.
If you take other developed country like Japan, I already told you that in the previous sessions when we discussed about development, that Japan is also one of the developed country having the higher level of income actually. Okay. And if you look at the Japan situation, in Japan almost like 1% is employed, that like if you look at the output level, only 1% is contributed by the agriculture. Yes. Okay. If you look at the factory sector, secondary sector, 30%. The 30% of the output or production comes from the factory, secondary sector. Tertiary sector, and it is around 70%. Okay. In developed countries, primary constitute very minuscule proportion of output actually.
So, doctor, in order to get a good GDP, so in which sector should increase? Like,
so obviously the tertiary sector is the final destination.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give you another data. This is with regard to what I discussed to you is with regard to output, production.
Okay.
If you look at employment level, in America, only 1% is engaged in agriculture.
Yes.
The 79% is engaged in service sector.
Yes.
Okay. In factory sector, about 20% is engaged in
yes, sir.
factory secondary sector. If you look at Japan situation, in Japan also 25% is employed in secondary sector. In agriculture, only 3% is employed.
Yeah.
So the people have to move from agriculture and then to industry and then to finally to service sector.
Yeah, so that means that their increase in literacy rate and they are being more educated.
That could be possible actually.
Yeah.
But if you look at the employment and in the output, they have to move from agriculture to secondary and then to tertiary sector.
Okay.
That is how many countries have developed.
Okay.
Countries have moved from agriculture to other activities. If you look at the way India, China, what is the situation in India and China? If you look at India's situation, almost today in terms of employment, because why I am comparing here India and China figures, because these are the developing countries. You already know that according to the World Bank classification, India and China, they are part of the middle income countries. Yeah. Okay. So how these two countries, which are major producers, are having largest amount of GDP, how they are performing in terms of employment. In India, I already told you that 45% is employed in agriculture, yes. 24% is employed in industry, and 31% is in service sector. Yeah. If you look at China, China is also having similar figure, but the dependency on agriculture is very less. Yeah. Only 27% is employed in agriculture, yeah. And factory employment 29%. People may say that the manufacturer of the world is China, but if you look at the employment figure, only 29% is employed in factories. In India, it is about 24% actually. In service sector, the China is moving higher level because almost 44% of people are employed in service sector.
Yes.
Okay. So in historical trajectory, if you look at 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, people move from agriculture to industry and then to service sector. This happens in already developed countries, and this is also happening in the middle income countries like India and China. Okay. And then so you may be interested in that why service sector contribution is more.
Yeah.
Okay. I already told you that these days, if you look at 40, 50 years before, we did not have all the motorized transport facilities. People used their bullock carts to transport goods. But today you have a motorized vehicles, yeah. So a lot of technology has come, many new vehicles have come. So because of which what happened, there is an increase in demand for those services, service activities. People no longer wanted to walk, yeah. They want to travel. Okay. So the demand for the service activities have increased, okay. In both primary and secondary sector. Yeah. Okay. That is one reason why the service sector contributes more now. The demand for service sector has increased. Yes. The second thing is that when people's income increases, the need for service activities. For example, when people's family, like many families now witness that when their income increases, they go for a outing, they go for a hotel, once in a week, once in a month, they go for travel, tourism, they go to different places to see. Okay, so the entertainment, recreation, these activities increase actually. In the same way, if you look at the other reason is that the financial development.
Okay.
So for example, earlier we had very few banks. Today we have many banks now established by.
Yeah.
So the financial activities are also increasing now. Financial means it includes banks, insurance companies, and non-banking companies. They are all getting set up. Many more now. That is one of the reasons why service sector contributes. They are all part of the service sector activities. So their demand is increasing. So service sector contribution is more actually. And many times what happened, like governments, 50 years before or 100 years before, many countries were not democratic governments.
Yeah.
They were all ruled by the kings, rulers, kings. But today, most countries are democratic governments. So when they are becoming democratic governments, they take a lot of responsibilities in the interest of in the interest of people's welfare actually.
Yeah.
For example, in India, we had only 5 lakh schools in the whole of India, 5 lakh institutions. But today you have almost 15 lakh schools.
Yeah.
The number of hospitals have increased, the amount of road has increased, the kilometers of roads. So all the basic facilities, for example, most of the electricity is produced by the government today. Okay, and so the democratic governments, they take responsibility in providing basic infrastructure facilities.
Yeah.
That means they are all constitute part of the service sector. Then, for example, new activities. For example, 20 years before, you may be very you may not be knowing about it. 20 years before, we did not have computers we have today. For example, now I am getting recorded this in advance before it is getting telecasted by using computers and many other technologies. The computer technology, information communication technologies have come into big way. For example, many companies like Infosys, they produce softwares by sitting here and they send it export.
Okay.
That constitutes crores of rupees in a year. So the new activities are getting emerged over the years. They are also part of the service activities. Then there's one more trick also matters here actually. Service sector means it does not mean that like everything is produced in a better manner. There are limitations with this measurement also. How the value of the service sector production is estimated. One way is that suppose I already told you that when you are producing a bread,
Yeah.
it is the value addition on the basis of which the production is estimated.
Yeah.
In case of service sector, for example, I am working in a government job. Okay, my services, my value of services is estimated on the basis of the earning that I am getting.
Yeah.
Suppose you are going on a roadside, you look at a cobbler, you are getting your footwear mended actually.
Yeah.
Okay, then you are paying what you are paying, whatever the amount he is asking, you are paying him. You may be paying 20 rupees or 10 rupees, 50 rupees. Okay, so the value of the service sector contribution is based on the salaries people earn,
Yeah.
but doesn't mean that the output is same. For example, when the government introduces a pay commission salaries, okay, for example, my salary 10 years before was one amount, say about 50,000 rupees, and today I am earning 1 lakh rupees, but my output did not increase suddenly. Okay, so it is just a notional actually.
Yeah.
Since it is based on the salaries, it is estimated. Sometimes it is also showing an inflated number.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is not that the exact output. Whereas in farmer case or in case of a factory, they are measured in the basis of value addition actually.
Yeah.
But this kind of value addition cannot be easily seen in the case of service sector.
Okay.
Okay, and you will also find that because of this estimational issue, sometimes service sector production level is getting inflated. That is also one of the reasons why service sector contribution looks very high actually. If you look at what are the limitations of GDP? GDP has all the limitations, but I am giving you one or two only. A wheat produced today
Yeah.
by using lot of machinery, tractors, harvesters, threshers, and a high yielding variety of fertilizers, pesticides, so on, irrigation, so on. But a wheat produced 50 years before, how it was produced? There was no there was no tractor.
Yeah.
People have to plow by using animals.
Yeah.
Okay, and we used to put a lot of laborers actually. So can you compare the 1 kilogram, the amount of effort taken today is equivalent to the amount of effort taken 50 years before?
Yeah.
At the time, lot of human power was
Yeah.
used, animal power was used, but today it is a modern electric power is used actually. So can this be two compared?
Yeah.
No, it is not easily comparable. Today's worth of wheat Today, for example, I am showing this wheat. It is using a lot of technology.
Yeah.
Okay, but 50 years before we did not use that much technology. Okay, so GDP does not tell you how it is produced, what technology is used.
Okay.
So this number is also very problematic actually.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, for example, a wheat produced in Punjab, wheat produced in Arunachal Pradesh. Can this be comparable? In Arunachal Pradesh, it is a hill. You produce with only manpower.
Yeah.
Here you are producing with a lot of other technology.
Yeah.
So there are many limitations with regard to estimation, GDP as an estimation. And why agriculture is still the employer? One reason is that we are not able to generate sufficient employment opportunities in India. And for example, in agriculture sector, if 2 people are able to produce this much of wheat, but actually 5 people are employed because no other employment opportunities are available. Okay.
Underemployment.
This is called underemployment, or this is also called disguised employment. If the government, if all the community takes initiatives to shift those surplus employees from agriculture to other sectors, it is possible that
There is increase in GDP.
there is increase in GDP and there is underemployment will come down. Why agriculture is still a major employer? Also because the government is now withdrawing itself since 1990s due to economic reforms, about which you will learn later. But I would say that the decline in the responsibility of the government in many production activities is also a major reason why agriculture is the major employer.
Okay.
Let me come back to the assessment. I am going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So take on your notebook. And then viewers, just take your notebook also, just answer these questions. If you are able to answer correctly, I'm sure that you will be like this session is doing fine. The first question: coffee served in my house is a final good. True or false? You can write T for true, F for false. Agriculture is the major contributor to GDP in 2013-14. True or false?
Okay.
In Japan, service sector contributes more, maximum to the employment. True or false? In 4 decades, 1977 to 2018, the share of employment in agriculture has decreased. True or false? In 4 decades, the share of employment has decreased. In sixth question, in United States of America, agriculture contributes maximum to the output. 7th question, disguised unemployment is more in the service sector. True or false? See, the learning outcomes of this chapter is that you should be able to interpret the bar and pie diagrams associated with income and employment. The second thing we are expecting from you that you should be able to evaluate criteria to classify goods, economic activities, enterprise, people. Okay. Then you should be able to recognize the interdependency, how people are depending on each other in different sectors. And then you should be able to define what is GDP, what is primary sector, what is secondary sector, what is final goods, what is intermediate goods, and so on. You are also expected to define GDP, what is GDP. Okay, and you should be able to explain how GDP is estimated using value-added method. Then finally, you should be able to analyze how GDP, the value of GDP has changed in India, and how it is performing in comparison to employment. And if you are able to compare with the developed countries also, and show that you have achieved the learning outcomes. So is that clear to you now?
Yeah.
Thank you viewers for watching this session. Today we have discussed about the gross domestic product, and we have also discussed about classification of goods, classification of economic activities into 3. And in the next session we will be discussing about what are the other ways we can classify economic activities. We will be looking at particularly 3 ways, for example, organized, unorganized, private, public, and so on. Thank you very much for watching this session.